Today, we are getting my viewers to vote for all of the weapons in Apex Legends and ask them whether a weapon is underrated or overrated. And then I'm going to give my opinion and some tips on how to use each weapon in the game. So let's jump into it, starting with the Alternator one. Alright, so it's sitting at a 54% overrated rating so far, which makes sense, right? This is what I was thinking. It's a split in between the middle. And it's because this is probably the benchmark for the most versatile weapon in Apex Legends. Is it overpowered? No. Is it really good? Yes. The DPS is pretty high. It's not like an R99. It's not like a Devotion, Havoc. It's not going to be spitting out as much damage as a Peacekeeper or something. But the good thing about this weapon is its fire rate isn't crazy fast. Its recoil is pretty easy to control. So you're going to be able to like damage people from a very good distance. Like regardless of whether you're up close, long range, this is the do-it-all weapon, right? This is the do-it-all weapon. So versatile but balanced. Up close, it can hit fire if you need it to. It's got AR ADS movement speed, so it's not the fastest weapon to use while ADS. It's not the most accurate weapon long range, but overall, it does everything. It's a jack of all trades. It does everything well enough to be a primary weapon in almost all cases. Underrated, 83% vote. So I think it's very clear off the bat the RE45 is underrated. So let's talk quickly about the RE45. What is special about this weapon? Well, it's not quite a pistol. It's like a machine pistol. So when you ADS, you actually have movement speed in between the P2020, Wingman, Mozambique, and the SMGs. So you move a little slower. A little bit. But it's still a very decent movement speed. It's pretty good. And this thing's got a really good hipfire. What the? Okay, the game's lagging there. Hello? 1 second. It does have a really good hipfire, I promise. The game just went weird there. It lacks DPS. One of the biggest problems with the RE45 is it lacks DPS. It has lower DPS than the Alternator. Like, let's think about the SMG tiers, right? The SMGs are sort of like where you want to be for high DPS, right? R99 is king. I think it comes in at like 199 DPS or something. Then you have the Volt, which is 180. Then you have the Alternator, which is 160. And I believe the RE45 is even lower than that. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad gun. Like, you can still one-clip a full purple player. And like I said, amazing hipfire. That's probably like one of the things that it's good at, is the hipfire. If we shoot with this gun, you'll see the recoil is a little strange. It's diagonal, right? Most guns are kind of like up a little bit like this, which means for most guns, you can just pull down and you're going to have very good recoil. If you pull down with the RE45, it's not really going to do the same thing. So we're going to have to, yeah, I mean, definitely underrated for sure. Yeah, so it's definitely more even. This is kind of like the most trash tier weapon in the game. Like, you don't really want it, right? You don't really want this weapon. Now that the hammer points are gone, like, why would you take this weapon? It can fire fast if you've got a fast trigger finger, and it can work in a pinch, right? But it's just not what you really want. Like, the base damage has been buffed a little bit, but in Season 9. But yeah, like I say, there's not really much to say about it. It's a weak pistol. The damage output's bad. It's not necessarily the best thing to hit with, but you can make it work in a pinch. Alright, 74% overrated. So it's not super overrated, but it is pretty overrated. The R99 is a very, very popular gun. But yeah, I do agree. It is a little overrated. One of the biggest issues with this gun is it fires fast. Your bullets are going to be gone so fast. And because of the fast fire rate, it kind of has a difficult recoil. Like, the actual recoil pattern, as you'll see here, is very simple. I mean, all you need to do is just pull down, right? But for a lot of players, when they're in the heat of things, it's nice to have something a little more reliable. In most cases, I'd actually rather take an Alternator off the drop than an R9, because the Alternator, I know I'm going to be hitting more shots, the mag's going to last longer, it's going to be easier to down players with like a stock R9, but it's not impossible. Like, you can do it, right? You can practice with this thing. You can even do pretty well with it long range. But yeah, there's a lot more choices, and sometimes pure DPS doesn't mean everything, right? Like, would you rather have a gun that's going to reliably hit shots, or a gun that is a beam machine, but a lot of times it's a little too crazy. I don't know. If you just aim for the body or something, let's have a look at that compared to this. There's quite a significant difference in time to kill there. So, you know, yeah, there's better choices. Another thing with the R9 is it's not always the most versatile weapon, right? Like, the R31 is the versatile one of these two brothers. And the R9, I mean, you can kind of use it long range, but you got the Vault, you got the Alternator if you really want like a mid-range SMG. Underrated 84%. Look at that. I would have to agree. The Alternator, like, it doesn't have a high damage per second. It doesn't. And that's why it kind of gets overlooked a lot. But it's so easy to use. The way the recoil works on this gun is really interesting. It has two alternating barrels. If we look at this, you'll see how the bullets kind of step up like in a ladder here. Like bam, 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 bam. So the recoil is it's so easy to use, right? I mean, if you're going to master an SMG, it's going to be this one. It's just, it's the easiest thing to use in the world in terms of SMGs. So it's not a bad thing. Not only that, but it has decent hip fire. All right. It's pretty good. Maybe not as good as the RE45, but it's very good. And what I really like about this weapon is because of that weird barrel thing, I feel like it's pretty easy to like just tap shots long range like this. Like this is one feature that I think gets overlooked on the Alternator. You can do that very easily because of that alternating barrel. And what's cool about this weapon, like, you're doing 16 damage per shot, you know? So if you're tapping enemies, right? Like, that's pretty decent. Let's say you've got an R31, you're only doing 14 damage per shot. This is actually, you know, when every bullet counts, it's not a bad choice. So let's see what people are saying about this. 73% underrated here. People are leaning towards underrated for this weapon. Yeah, I mean, in a world where people are taking R301s, Spitfires, R9s, you know, full auto, the Sentinel, the Scout doesn't get as much attention these days. I do agree. I feel like this weapon is really good for damage farming. It's really good. Like, if someone picks a corner, picks an angle long range, like, you're going to be able to just volley a lot of damage. It fires pretty fast as well. The one, like, I mean, everything, like, long to, I'd say, medium to, like, sort of long range, this thing does pretty decently. I'm a big fan of it. You definitely want a barrel on it, though, right? Because, like, long range, it starts to feel pretty weird without a barrel. But you get a barrel, and that recoil is not really such an issue anymore, right? A really good weapon for just suppressing enemies long range. 50-50, really? You're saying it's just where it is. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like, it's interesting. People will say that this weapon's decent, but people won't say this weapon's amazing, right? It's rare that you'll see people saying this weapon is amazing, like it's the sniper to use, you gotta use it, because it is still a little slow fire rate. Like, you can do some pretty crazy stuff. Getting like a headshot on this thing, especially when it's charged, or you're behind a rampart wall, that can change a fight, for sure. It can change a fight, but it is a little unreliable. It's very slow firing. If you miss your shot, it could cause some issues. The hip fire is nowhere near as good as the Longbow, for sure. See this here? We're not hitting every shot, right? Alright, let's see. It's a neck and neck. So people are saying it's pretty much what they say it is. Not necessarily underrated or overrated. I mean, it's true. Everyone knows the charge rifle's capabilities now. It is a nightmare to deal with when you're getting shot at long range, but that's all it does. It eats a lot of ammo. You don't see it that often because it eats a lot of ammo, but yeah. It could be nasty in the right situations, and up close, it's just kind of a mess. So it's one of those weapons that has a very specific use case. I think it's great for damage farming. It's great for getting kills and securing kills in ranked. But yeah, very specific use case. So you're going to need something versatile like the R301 to back it up. But one thing that I think is kind of underrated about it is its hipfire potential. Like, okay, you obviously want like any other weapon up close for sure. But if you have to use this, it's very accurate. And what's really cool about this weapon is it's accurate in midair. No matter where you're aiming, it is accurate. No matter what you're doing, it's accurate. Let me go show you it on a jump pad, right? It can be pretty versatile because of this, but it's not going to win you fights exactly. So here's the Sentinel midair, right? Of course we miss. I mean, we're not going to hit that. The hipfire is going to be all over the place. The charge rifle, on the other hand, has 100% accuracy all the time, no matter what you're doing, which has benefits. It does have benefits. So, you know, that's something to consider. Underrated, really. People think the longbow doesn't get enough credit. I will say that you don't really see the longbow much, for sure. You don't really see the longbow much. Very underrated weapon. Okay, that's cool. One of my biggest complaints of the longbow is that the bullet travel time for a sniper is a little slow. I just feel like, okay, sure, you've got enough ammo to like figure out how to lead your shots, so that's one thing. But a lot of times, like, I'd rather just take an R301, a repeater, a scout, something that fires even faster, because you don't have much chance to shoot someone who's out in the open, because people are smart. They know how to position around cover well. This is one of the biggest issues with this weapon. I think this is like, with some practice, you're going to do pretty well with this at long range, but you're going to have to learn how to lead your shots, and that will take some experience. But if you can do that, yeah, has some potential for sure. A bit underrated, but still a bit overrated. So people are kind of leaning towards underrated on this one. I would agree this weapon is very underrated. This weapon is very versatile. You can use it long range, you can use it up close. It's a marksman, so it has movement speed in between the ARs and the snipers when you're ADSing. So you're not going to be super versatile whilst ADSing with this thing. But it works. It works. Long range, this thing, I think, is actually really good. I think it's really, really good. I think that's why it is one of its most underrated features. Like, really long range, you know? Like, 200-meter distances. I don't know. I just find it really easy to deal damage with this thing long range. I don't know if that's just me. But another thing with this weapon is it's not bad up close. I mean, I probably underrate this hop-up. I never really use it. But, I mean, look at this damage. It's not bad. It's not bad, right? I like it a lot. I used to hate it, but I like it. This weapon has a weird recoil as well. But I feel like once you get used to that, it kind of like jolts up to the right a little bit. But once you get used to that, it's really effective. There it is, straight off the bat. 78% overrated. The Wingman is really good. Really, really, really good. But there's one big problem. You have to actually hit your shots, right? One of the biggest reasons people have a problem with the Wingman is because in this game, if you get shot, you get slowed down, right? If you get shot at, your movement literally slows. So if you have a full auto weapon or a weapon that fires fast, the follow-up shots are going to be easier. As long as you hit them just a couple times, it's going to be easier to hit them again because they're going to be slowed. With the Wingman, if you don't hit that first shot, they're going to be moving all over the place. You haven't slowed them down. You haven't hit them yet. There's nothing to slow their movement, right? So you're going to keep whiffing and whiffing and whiffing because they've got full movement speed until you hit that first shot. And then it's going to be a little easier. That's the problem with the Wingman. You got to hit that first shot. Otherwise, you're going to mess up. It's a weapon that's definitely needed for people who are going to be able to trust their aim a lot. Another thing is that it's a pistol, which means when you ADS, you actually have the same movement speed as if you were hip firing, which is actually really beneficial. You'll see a lot of like experienced players, what they'll do, sometimes they'll take a 2x and they'll sit long range and they'll just spam shots like this, trying to peel damage off people. In a lot of cases, that's actually kind of more effective than like taking a sniper and just sitting there and holding an angle, because when you have a sniper or an LMG, you move very slowly. With a Wingman, you can move it around. You're really hard to hit. Trying to hit a player strafing with a Wingman long distance is really hard. You're going to be shooting really slow with your weapon, where they're just going to go bam, 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 bam. This weapon is absolutely overrated. It's annoying to go against because everyone uses it. That's the main problem. If only a few people used it, you wouldn't care. But because so many people use it, that's why it's overrated. Why do people use this weapon? The main reason, it has a huge magazine and it fires reasonably slowly so that you can basically just keep firing, right? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, look, well, there's my target. Oh, they're dead, right? The Spitfire is a problem because of that larger magazine, but ultimately it can be defeated. All you need to do is have better aim than the player with the Spitfire. The only reason you die to a player with the Spitfire is because you have a higher DPS weapon and you miss your shots. And then you're reloading, or you're like fumbling around, or you're trying to escape, and all they're doing is just standing there and doing this. Right? Don't miss your shots, and you beat the Spitfire. It's as simple as that. One thing, though, that is kind of a nuisance of the Spitfire is its long-range potential. Because it has so much ammo, it's very easy to, like, figure out how to lead your shots and just keep firing. You can be like, where's my target? Oh, here. Oh, yeah, there we go. Right? Yeah, that's kind of a nightmare to deal with, and I think that that's a bit overpowered. So yeah, I think it's up close potential. A lot of people use it up close. I think that's super overrated, for sure, and people should really try to use other weapons, because at the end of the day, that's the only reason people die. It's just a simple, oh, you missed your shots. They missed their shots too, but they still have more shots to use, you know? Probably, by the poll so far, one of the most underrated weapons in the game. Interesting. Low risk, low reward. Hemlock is good off the drop. Hemlock does insane damage. Hemlock is good mid-long range. Hemlock is weak. Season 7 Hemlock was silly. It was. After the Hemlock nerf, it became underrated. Yeah, I would agree. People use this like crazy in Season 7. It got a nerf. Everyone stopped using it. Like, everybody. Is it a bad weapon? No. I mean, the reason why people used it is because you could 2-burst people really effectively, right? But you can still burst people really well. Because it's sort of like a burst weapon. And it has a single fire mode as well. I feel like it's pretty easy to use long range. I imagine the DPS probably falls off to like AR, full auto ARs a bit. But it's the same kind of deal. Like, are you going to actually hit your shots with this full auto flatline? Or are you going to find it easier to just burst people, fire a little slower, and make sure you actually hit your target, right? And I'm not sure. I haven't used this weapon much recently, but the hip fire has always been pretty good, right? I don't really use this weapon much, so I don't have too much to say about it. I'm going to have to give it another try. Okay. I was expecting it to be a little bit more underrated than this, but people, I guess, are rating it pretty, you know, they're saying, this is the flatline. We think it is what it is. Flatline does 19 damage. R31 does 14. You know, it's got 2 more bullets per mag at full magazine size. And more damage per shot. So the damage per mag on this thing is so much higher. So much higher. And, you know, that's pretty decent. And the DPS between these two weapons is basically exactly the same. So you have a slower firing, higher damage AR here, and a faster firing, lower damage weapon here. You're going to be out of ammo with this weapon faster than this one. But I think the reason people lean towards this one is its recoil. It's a lot easier to use this weapon. People kind of lean towards this because it is very easy. The recoil on the flatline is a little harder to kind of master, right? I get that. Okay, the vault here is being a little bit underrated. I guess that makes sense, right? We've got 2 SMGs. The Vault and the R9 are kind of like the most popular SMGs. And people will say the R9's overrated and the Vault is underrated. I think that over time, though, people have kind of leaned more towards the Vault. I'm seeing more Vaults in the game. Thing is with the Vault is its recoil is basically just non-existent. You know, it has very little recoil. It's really easy to control. The damage isn't as high as the R99, the DPS, but it fires a little slower, so you know, your mag's going to be lasting longer. It's going to be easier to one-clip someone with the Volt than it is the R9, just simply because you're not going to have to worry about suddenly your whole magazine going out in half a second. It is an energy weapon, which means its bullet travel time is slightly better than the other SMGs, so that means it can be used pretty effectively long range. Devotion is underrated, for sure. I would say the Devotion is one of the most underrated weapons in the game, because when people think LMGs, they go, oh, let's take the Spitfire. But the Devotion DPS is crazy good. And it has a huge mag. 3 less than the Spitfire, but this thing is crazy good. It also has a very high bullet travel time, which means you can shoot long range. It's got a weird kick on the first shot, though. Before this, like, they changed the recoil, right? It never used to do this first kick. Before that, you could spam fire it like this. And you would destroy people long range, right? But now that kick is a little harder to do. But it's still a thing. And obviously, the major downside of the Devotion is you kind of want to find a turbocharger. You kind of want to find a bunch of energy ammo. And most games, you're not really going to end up with both a turbocharger and a lot of energy ammo. I would say there's one day per week when you can get the turbocharger and the crafting. I would say if you want some easy wins, craft yourself a bunch of ammo, craft yourself a turbocharger on that day, and just go at it. Because this weapon is actually disgusting. I think it's just disgusting. Like, the amount of damage it outputs, it has a really high DPS. It was nerfed. It used to have the highest DPS in the game out of all full auto weapons by a long shot. But it did get nerfed, so I'm not sure on the stats now. I'm not sure if it's still the highest DPS with the turbocharger or not. But I can tell you that it is nasty. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then you go to Devotion. 1, 2, 3. So, like I say, it's the better LMG if you can find all the attachments for it, but you don't usually do that. Underrated, yes, okay. People are saying this is one of the most underrated weapons. I agree. This thing has a really good recoil now. They buffed the recoil again. So let's have a look here. Let's go up to this wall. Have a look at the recoil. So, it's got quite a kick to it, but for the most part, you literally just pull down. There's no, like, weird recoil like there used to be. So, yeah, you just pull down. And it's a crazy amount of damage. How much damage does it do? 18. Headshot is 32. It used to be 36, though, right? Long range, this thing is pretty good. Remember when it had that weird select fire feature? You can't really use it that effectively long range without a turbocharger, but once you do have a turbocharger, kind of the same deal as the Devotion. It's an energy weapon. There's very little bullet drop. The bullets arrive really fast. It's not hit scan, but they do. The bullet travel time is very fast. So I feel like you can do this pretty well long range. Let's try and find this one here. See that? Like,
let's go over here.
look at this bullet drop. Okay, you see where I'm shooting on the crosshair here? Now let's go and get... Oh, we got a Spitfire. We may as well use the Spitfire for perfect comparison here. Devotion, right there. Spitfire? Like here? It's quite a lot higher. Underrated as well. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Not as underrated as the Havoc? Okay. That makes sense, considering the... I think there's still a large amount of people that don't think the Outstar is a good weapon. A lot of people still think it's a bad weapon. And I do agree it's a weird weapon. It is a weird weapon. Now, let's talk about why the Outstar is special. The Outstar is an LMG, but it doesn't have LMG movement speed, right? When you ADS with this thing, this is how slow you go with a real LMG, and this is how you go with an Outstar. The Outstar is actually, it shares movement speeds of ARs, right? Another thing about the L-Star is both of the Devotion and Spitfire have had their hipfire spread nerfed like repeatedly. They keep nerfing the Devotion and Spitfire hipfire. It ends up getting pretty bad. They haven't nerfed the L-Star. They have not nerfed the L-Star hipfire. It's still really good. It's got a bit of a weird sideways recoil, but it's not much of an issue. It's just that first couple bullets, right? That's one thing about the L-Star. Another thing about the L-Star. Now, considering it's not really like an LMG, let's talk about the headshot multiplier. It's 2 times. It is 2 times. If we look at the SMGs, it's 1.5 times. If we look at the ARs, I believe it is 1.7 times, or something like that. LMGs have 2 times headshot multiplier, right? But why that's special with the L-Star specifically is the actual size of the bullets is huge. This is an L-Star bullet. This is a Devotion bullet. You see the difference there? What that means is if you hit someone like here, it's going to be a headshot more often than if you hit someone here with a Devotion. You see what I mean? Or any other weapon. The L-Star bullet size is so big that it's going to mean you're going to get more headshots just naturally because of the huge bullet size. And that's going to mean double damage, which is crazy. That's one of the most underrated features with the L-Star. And not only that, it actually has a really high DPS. I'm not sure where it stands right now, but once again, it used to be one of the highest DPS guns in the game. It was super underrated. People didn't like it because you can't even see what you're looking at. But nowadays, it's nowhere near as bad. Remember, when it first came out, it didn't even have this little red dot. It was a nightmare. It's strong. You can use it hip firing, you can use it up close. And on top of that, it basically blinds your enemies. Like, if you shoot someone, they're going to be like, what is going on? For me, one of the most underrated weapons in the game. Yeah, I don't like the bow. I'm really bad with it. I find it really hard to hit people with this thing. Bowshake is the most annoying gun in the game. You can't see or hear where you're getting shot from most of the time. That's true. Some people are saying it's overrated, actually. 59% overrated. I don't know. I think that they released it really strong, but only in arenas. Because in arenas, you hold angles. People are going to walk into your crosshairs. You're ready for them. In Battle Royale, people are all over the place. You can't have the freedom to just sit somewhere and hold an angle. I think it was never that good in Battle Royale. I think it was never that good in Battle Royale. I think it's overrated. Like, if you see a Kraber, are you going to take it or not? Overrated? Really? Some people would rather take probably their... Here's a question I'm going to ask. If you see a Kraber in a care package, are you going to drop it? If you have your 2 favorite weapons in the game, are you going to drop one of them for a Kraber? No, maybe. Yes, I would. 2 OP balance. No, yes, yes. Take, of course. Love it. No. Yes, no, yes, no. Yes, no, 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 no. A lot of no's there. Okay, so I think one of the issues with this weapon is, once again, if you can hit your shots with it, it's going to win you fights. Absolutely. It's going to win you fights. This is going to win you fights. This, I don't know, maybe not. People will just go behind cover and heal. But if you can get headshots with this thing, you will win games, you will win fights with this weapon. 100% underrated? What the? What happened? 68% underrated. Okay. Really? Okay, the Triple Take's always been a very good weapon. For sure. Yes, yes, yes. Really? People are saying it's underrated. Okay. Fair enough. I guess people really like this weapon. It is good. I mean, you have very great... there's like no bullet drop. The bullet travel time is almost instant. It was strong before it was added to the care package. Now it charges up faster. The charge lasts a little bit whilst being in hip fire, so you can go like this. Oh, okay, if I actually hit my shot. Underrated. Okay. People are saying it's underrated. I understand that. Underrated. I will say that there's like an opinion of this weapon that a lot of people have that it's not worth picking up because it doesn't have much ammo, or it's like, why would I pick it up when I've already got a fully kitted R9 or Vault or something? But it's 200 ammo. When you actually get this gun in game, it's going to be the late stages. It's going to be enough ammo. If you don't kill somebody with it and get their gun, if you somehow run out of ammo, then I don't know. I feel like you're going to be able to kill someone with it. I think it's pretty underrated, just a little bit, because I think it's very good. It's a very, very powerful SMG, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely underrated. This thing is actually really good. The good thing is with this weapon, some people still don't know. If you ADS with this thing, the spread is so much better, right? ADS, hipfire, like, it's so much better. This is kind of like a short-range wingman, right? But it's full auto. It's full auto. So that's kind of crazy. There are a lot of times that I would rather have a Mozambique than other shotguns. Not all the time, but if I were to have, like, let's say there's a Mastiff and a Mozambique on the floor, I would definitely take the Mozambique for just slightly longer range. And up close, it's kind of nasty as well. I think it's really good. I think it's a really good weapon. I mean, you can do pretty well with it, like, even at this distance, you know? 78% overrated. This is the weapon that you see everybody use, and when they hit you, they do 100 damage. And when you hit them, you do nothing. This weapon, you have to hit people on target. You have to get the right shot. You have to hit on target, otherwise you just miss and do nothing, and you're just going to be like, oh, 16s everywhere. Very high skill weapon. It's not always reliable, you know? If you can make it work, then yes, it's going to win you fights. It's going to turn around games for you. Yeah, there we go. Straight away, we're seeing sort of like neck and neck, because everyone knows it's super strong, right? It's not underrated. It's not overrated. It's there. It's in the public eye. We're going to get DC'd again. Yeah, EVA 8, super strong. You can hip fire with it. You can ADS with it. The spread doesn't change. It's the only shotgun that doesn't have like a changing spread based on if you're ADSing or not. So that's quite nice. Fires so fast with a purple bolt. Yeah, I mean, some people are saying it's underrated just a tiny bit. I guess the reason for that is simply because you do still see a lot of Peacekeepers and Mastiffs in the game. Something that you have to realize with this weapon is the spread is reduced massively when you ADS. You almost always want to ADS with this weapon. Almost always. Shotguns don't have 100% speed. Like, if you ADS, it's very slightly slower than hip firing, but it's still very good. You still move very fast, so ADSing isn't a massive issue. Mastiff is neck and neck. Okay. That's interesting. I would say that now we have the Mozambique, the Peacekeeper, and the Eva. I would say the Mastiff is very slightly underrated, because it's not the highest damage shotgun. It's not the fastest firing shotgun. So a lot of people will either take the Peacekeeper or Eva 8 over it. But one thing that I like with this shotgun is that I guess I'm just used to it, right? If you miss your shots with the Peacekeeper, you may find that you hit your shots with the Mastiff, because of the spread pattern. The best place to aim is here, because it like goes across their shoulders. It's the largest like horizontal point on a player. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bit of a long one, but maybe you learned some things along the way. I'll see you all in the comments. Cheerio.